But today's kind of webinar is going to be on the Emergency Procedure Register and actually how to develop emergency procedures inside the system, this register's relationship with the other registers inside the system, and what you should be doing using some of the other registers to actually coincide with this kind of development of this section. So what is an emergency procedure? If you actually looked up Safe Work Australia emergency documents, you've actually got all these fact sheets just here for you. So when you actually do download that there, you can actually download this emergency plan template. What this will do, it'll actually help you go through all the processes that you should be identifying to actually put into an emergency plan. So it's Safe Work Australia, you can download those documents, it's all public, free. You can even upload that document inside your system if you wanted to, or build your kind of processes around it. It's a very, very good document. Yes, it's very, very long and very, very detailed, but if you did want to go to the full step, this is where you would actually, maybe read through that and then use the system to actually develop and implement it. So very, very good document. There's lots of information on, Safe Work New South Wales and all, depending on what state you're in. If you go to those websites, and if you type in how to develop emergency procedures or what's your responsibility relating to emergency procedures, you can actually gather all this information and don't have to pay a consultant to do so. You can do it yourself. So another kind of document, it's one of our clients. Every race course in New South Wales is a client of ours. So going around to these courses originally, implementing emergency procedures and that they could actually follow. So I actually wrote this a while ago, and I've constantly updated it depending on, so for an example, what's been going on. So I will actually put this document up into the helpful resources section after this meeting as well. So you can actually use this as a bit of a guide. But if you did follow this kind of process, it would help you a lot. So let's talk about, just for an example, as an analogy with the racing clubs. A lot of people just would think, hang on a sec, my emergency procedure is fire. But no, you're an outdoor facility. You've got thousands of people at your venue. Obviously, storm, an electrical storm and lightning is a really big thing. So when you're looking at some of these race clubs, the country race clubs, they actually don't have all these facilities where all these people can get underneath a building or inside a building. So the process was, go to the safest place was back to their cars. So if they sit in their cars, basically you're looking at, it's going to be the safest place for them to be. And also windstorm. And a windstorm comes along, and then all of a sudden, they've got jumping castles and umbrellas and so forth. Well, they need to make sure that those jumping castles and the umbrellas are down. So this is thinking outside the square. And another one, especially it was around about 2 years ago when the drought was on out there, dust storms, because there was a case where a dust storm come up and actually threw across the track, and there was an incident relating to some of the horses because they couldn't see. So so these were important things, and thinking the other side of everything that could actually happen. There could be a medical emergency, like say for an example, there was at the English soccer game the other day where a third person had a heart attack in the grandstand, and they had to stop the game and so forth and put that in place. They've got other things like robbery, depending on what kind of business you're in. And of course, they've got drunken behavior as well. So what you need to do is identify your scenarios. That's what you need to do first. And then from that there, you would actually identify your emergency personnel. It's a good idea to print up the notification kind of timeframes around the area so people actually know what is a recordable incident. So that will be coming into the system in the coming 6 months, where you can actually say what is a recordable incident, and I'll actually highlight that. But you definitely need to develop a site map with all your evacuation points. For them, for the race clubs, I suggested they actually put it in their race book. So because most people buy a race book when they get there, but again, also put it around their facility so people can see it. So you would have signage around the facility. But since they're a venue where they've got public there, they can actually make an announcement and have emergency personnel and so forth. So that was kind of an analogy relating to race clubs, that you could still use that kind of process relating to your business. And hence why, if I actually come to another document that I've created, so if I come up here and go helpful resources, WHS audit tool, download that document. And if I go down to step 9, it's how to develop emergency procedures. So I'm actually taking you through an audit process here on how to actually develop that. So it's a good idea. What you need to do, you need to firstly, in your system, look at the activities you're undertaking, look at the machinery you're using, look at the chemicals you're using. If you're using dangerous, hazardous chemicals, you'll need to make sure that there's emergency procedure relating to, if it spills. So have you got spill kits? Have you got all the necessary fire extinguishers if something happens relating to those chemicals? Same thing with your plant equipment. What happens if there's an emergency procedure relating to certain equipment that you're actually using? So first of all, you need to identify everything and all your kind of areas that you need to develop an emergency procedure for. Then you would come to the emergency procedure register, and then you would actually add an emergency procedure. I'll just select edit next to this one. So in the emergency procedure, you can actually add your scenario here. Depending on what you've actually identified, you can add your scenario by just selecting that button there. Add your scenario, and that will actually put that into that list. You can put a general statement or a policy statement in here, because this is going to make it a nice kind of document. I can go next. I can actually develop a procedure by selecting this green plus sign. So you can select alerting systems. Well, getting back to this procedure, you could also use the checklist builder to build a procedure and make sure in an event of emergency procedure, you might have that put around your facility, but also you induct the people into the emergency procedure and so forth. But you might build a checklist with a QR code that people can scan so they can actually follow that emergency procedure when the emergency is on, because when an emergency is happening, everyone's panicking. So I know that's going to be hard for them to scan a QR code depending on what kind of incident it is, but it is a good way for you to actually identify and go through a process and try to calm people down in that kind of process. It's looking here is alerting systems. So you've identified the scenario, you've actually developed the procedures and so forth. You might be, alarmed to actually find that you actually don't have all these certain kind of alerting systems in place. So you need to identify the alerting systems depending on what the emergency scenario is. As I said to the race clubs, an alerting system, because they're so far away and so broad, the alerting system might be a walkie-talkie. So to alert a person that there is danger or whatever it may be, or hey, we put down the jumping castle, or put down the umbrellas because they'll become missiles. So you're actually educating all the people on making sure that you've got alerting systems in place. Again, you can use this green plus sign to do so. Select next. This is actually picking up your emergency equipment register. So you can select the emergency equipment needed for this scenario. And you've got emergency drill date. So if you do actually read through that document from Safe Work Australia, it highlights that you need to make sure that you actually practice these drills and have records to do so. This is the review date, and this is the review date of this actual document to see if it's still up to date. So I'll just get back to this date here. This is the next emergency drill date, not the drill date that you've done, the next emergency drill date. So it's and you're looking at, this is the review date to review this item. It's a good idea to actually put that review date in October, because that's when we actually have the webinar relating to emergency procedures and equipment. So if you marry up all your review dates to the webinars, it kind of educates you what you should be doing in the webinar. So try to set that review date later in the month, because we do this in the third Tuesday of every single month. So try to set those days later on. And this is the person responsible for the review of this document. Submit. So if I come back to the emergency procedure register, and if I select view, it turns it into a document. Now you'll see that it's got responsibilities here, and we actually didn't do the responsibility in that section. We did the emergency equipment, but so the emergency procedure register links to both this register, but also the responsibility register. So when you enter a responsibility inside here, you can relate it to a site. And when you've related that to that site, it will put it into the emergency procedure for the site that you've actually built the emergency procedure for. So it all interlinks. So you can actually just make sure you kind of follow that and do that kind of process. So as I mentioned before, it's a good idea for you to actually come down to the checklist feature and actually build an emergency procedure inside here. So, and then that way there, later on, we'll be actually linking this section to the log of the emergency procedure, so you can actually show the checklist that you've actually done that. Most importantly is educating your employees on emergency procedure. If you've developed an emergency procedure inside the system, it's useless if no one knows about it. So that's where you would actually come up to the induction builder. And you would actually build your emergency procedure inside here. You might say, for example, if I go manage the employees, oh, no, it's not the one I wanted, but you're looking at, you could actually have a graphic of your site, and then you could actually say, for example, upload it, remembering that if I select manage next to here, that you can actually upload a graphic by just selecting this icon here. But probably the best way for you to do, and maybe the easiest way to do it, is videotape your supervisor or your manager or whatever it may be, might be yourself, and introducing the people into the emergency procedures of your business. And it might be emergency procedures of a certain site you're working at. So videotape yourself, upload it to a YouTube channel. When you upload it to a YouTube channel, then all you're doing is copying that URL and pasting it here, and that will automatically insert the video inside here. You still can get a lot of good material from Safe Work Australia or Safe Work New South Wales or Safe Work South Australia, or wherever it may be, which state you're in. So if you go there and you type that in, you might even say, for example, use that other Word document, and that kind of process to actually develop your kind of induction side here. Or again, you can actually use the Racing New South Wales step, which I'll put inside the system afterwards. So you can actually use that as a bit of a guide on how to develop emergency procedures. So you need to make sure that you do educate your employees on this process. And a lot of people don't. A lot of people actually don't use these registers as much as they should, even though it's one of the most important things they should be doing. So if they do have, say, for example, a fire or whatever it may be, they still don't have any systems in place. But you're looking at, you're going to make sure that with your emergency equipment, that's why you've got your emergency equipment in here, make sure you actually set up your maintenance states, previous maintenance states. That's where you might say, for example, if you're putting your item in here for the first time, that item should be test and tagged. And when you actually test and tag that item, you can actually, put that date in there, but then you can actually put the next maintenance state in there. So it's just a great way for you to keep you up to date. So let's go to something that's also going to help you And I've actually just created this in the last couple of weeks. So imagine having a step-by-step process on exactly how the system works. Even though you might have already developed your system, it's a good idea to go through this process here. So watch the introduction. It'll actually tell you how to download that audit process, which links into this kind of section here. So you've probably already got all your sites in there. You've already got your activities in there, entering positions and so forth. So most of this stuff you actually have already done. But if you watch the little kind of 3 to 5 minute videos, you'll get the understanding of the concept of how to use the system. Because then after that, it's, well, you can't identify hazards if these weren't already in the system previously. So you identify your hazards relating to everything that you've actually entered inside the system. So your activities, your sites, your plan items, chemicals, etc. So it's then from that there, once you develop, you identify the hazards and your major risks, you can then develop your emergency procedures. So again, I'm taking you through a story on how to do it. So you might want to watch that if you want to develop your emergency procedures a little bit better. And then obviously, once you've developed your emergency procedures, then you actually can identify the emergency equipment needed to those procedures. And of course, you identify the responsibilities relating to all those kind of processes. So you might have to go backwards and forwards when you're developing that, but that's the concept of doing that. And after you actually have developed emergency procedures, what do you need to do? Well, obviously you need to develop policies in relating to those emergency procedures. And you've got to develop procedures into those emergency procedures by using the checklist feature to actually ensure those procedures are followed and done. So you can see that this is literally taking you through a journey on what you should be doing. And then from there, of course, you're going to develop inductions relating to what you've identified, your policies, your procedures, and your checklists, and induct people into them. And you're going to set alerts to automatically alert you to do so. So this is a new 16-step process I put into the system in the last couple of weeks. It's to just help people who actually are new to the system. But even if you're not new to the system and you have built your system, it's a great process for you to go through and help you identify how to get more out of the system itself. It will take you step by step through every single process. So it, and then, so for an example, make sure that you do the induction and then they've got the induction records. Now, I'll just highlight some of the new kind of features coming into the system in the very near future. And one of those is relating to inductions. We're updating the induction to make this more detailed. A lot of people didn't know what the colors kind of meant, and oh, hang on a sec, why is that red? So now it'll actually highlight all the different reasons why it might be red or might be orange. Obviously, yellow is training needs analysis, so it's a better color yellow this time. But one of the big features is you can actually assign mass inductions to a position, a site, or whatever it may be, all at one time. So, or you can actually do it, basically individually if you wanted to. So you can actually assign all the people when you filter it, then you can actually assign inductions, what inductions you want them to do. And then you can actually send it out. So it'll do bulk inductions quickly and easily and effectively. Other things inside the system that you should be using that have been put into the system in the last couple of months is obviously the vaccination section. So if I come down here to the vaccination section, it works exactly the same as the qualification section, exactly the same. So, and then when you enter that, you create your list inside there, and what the system will do, exactly like the qualification section, it'll automatically create a vaccination matrix. It also links to the position register like the qualification. So you can actually say a certain certain position needs to have a certain vaccination. And if they don't have it inside the system, it'll actually do a vaccination needs analysis, so to speak. So it's a good little feature. And then another great feature that we've put inside the system that you could use to make you look professional, as well as help, when people go, well, how do I know you're qualified, or have you got certain qualifications or inductions and so forth, the system now prints out an ID card. That's with your company name, your position, and a QR code. Now, if I scan that QR code, it'll actually open a nice, neat little section where the people can actually click on qualifications, or click on vaccinations, or click on emergency contacts, click on inductions. So you can actually highlight if your employees are going on a certain site and they want to see what's happening, you can actually use that feature there as well. So this one is a little bit quicker, this kind of section. It's obviously that emergency procedure is if you follow those steps and you follow those guides, especially that audit tool that I've actually created inside that section and that 16-step helper, it will really help you identify your emergency procedures and how to do it. And then follow the step-by-step guide and actually how to build it. So I hope you enjoyed that one. Looking forward to the next one. I'm not quite sure what the next one is, so I'll have to make it a special one on the new upgrades inside the system. But thank you, and if you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to send me an email and ask.